There's one thing I've learned after working here for over 3 months. Never ask too many questions. Not about the strange rules, not about the silent, unfamiliar customers, and definitely not about why one table is always locked, even though the place is never busy enough to worry about seating. I work the night shift at a small diner off Highway 83, deep in the heart of rural Nebraska. If you drive past it during the day, you probably wouldn't think twice. Just a worn-down wooden diner with a faded sign and a few tired trucks parked outside. But at night, this place doesn't belong to the normal world anymore. On my very first night, the old lady who owns the place shoved a crumpled piece of paper into my hand, a list of rules to strictly follow. She spoke in a flat tone, no jokes, no smiles. If you don't follow them, the diner won't protect you. I thought she was just trying to scare me. I wish I hadn't laughed. Because in my first week alone, I saw a man without a shadow standing outside the window staring at me for over an hour without blinking. And that was only the beginning. The night I took the job, it was drizzling and a thick fog blanketed the highway like a pale shroud. My GPS led me down a narrow, unlit road marked only by a weathered wooden sign that flickered faintly, Dixie's Diner, 24/7. I drove 2 more miles along a winding dirt path surrounded on both sides by tall, pitch-black cornfields. I had the creeping sensation that something was moving in the stalks, keeping pace with my car, step for step. When I arrived, an elderly woman was already standing by the door, not startled by my presence, not even curious. It felt like she had known the exact moment I'd arrive. Her hair was snow-white face, emotionless, and her eyes, sunken and cold as if peering straight through me. She didn't ask my name, didn't offer a greeting. She just shoved a crumpled piece of paper into my hands and said, "Read it, remember it, follow it." I unfolded it, a list of strange rules printed in bold as if they were commandments. 1. Never turn off the kitchen lights even when not in use. 2. If a customer arrives at exactly 2:03 a.m. and orders the red omelet, shut down the kitchen immediately and hide in the pantry for 10 minutes. 3. Do not look into the bathroom mirror after 1:33 a.m. under any circumstances. I chuckled, thinking it was a weird hazing ritual. But she didn't laugh. She just stared at me, like she was waiting for me to understand something. Something I wasn't ready for. Inside the diner smelled of old wood and grease. The yellow lights flickered dully. The wooden counters were cracked and splintered, and water stains on the ceiling looked like dried blood. No music, no radio, no traffic outside. Just the ticking of an old wall clock. Tick, 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 slicing through the silence like a blade. I began to wonder why I took this job. This place didn't just feel lonely. It felt unwelcome. As I walked around checking the booths, I stopped at table 4. It had a small sign placed on it, "Out of service," under maintenance, but nothing was broken. The table looked perfectly fine. In fact, there was a faint ring on the surface, like someone had just placed a cold glass there. I touched the chair. It was still warm. I felt a shiver crawl up my spine, like someone had been sitting there just seconds before I arrived. Around 1:00 a.m., while I was wiping down the counter, I heard it. 3 soft knocks on the front door. I turned. The door was closed. No one was there. I opened it. Cold wind rushed in, but nothing else. I shut it again. Just then, the ceiling light blinked 3 times. And then, I heard a whisper from somewhere I couldn't place. A soft voice hissing, "Don't look in the mirror. Don't look in the mirror." I was beginning to realize this place wasn't like anywhere I had ever been. Not just because of the loneliness, but because something, or someone, was watching me. And the night was only beginning. After the owner left, I sat alone behind the counter and unfolded the paper labeled "Mandatory Rules." There were 13 in total, each one stranger than the last, and completely defying logic. I reread each line, an uneasy feeling creeping over me. 4. If the lights flicker exactly 3 times, turn off all equipment and hide in the walk-in freezer. Do not speak even if you hear your name. 5. Never wash the single silver fork. Just leave it in the sink. 6. If a customer orders something that's not on the menu, politely apologize and ask them to leave. Never go into the kitchen. This wasn't superstition. These weren't scare tactics. This was survival. At exactly 2:03 a.m., a tall, skinny man wearing a baseball cap walked in. He didn't say a word, just sat down at table 6. When I approached, he looked up and said calmly, "I'll have a red omelet." My heart pounded. It was exactly like rule number 2. I nodded, pretending to go prepare it, then immediately turned off all the kitchen lights and ran into the freezer. For the next 10 minutes, I heard clattering like someone was cooking on their own out there. I held my breath, didn't move. When I stepped out, the man was gone. No footprints, no trace. Just the smell of eggs and blood. I noticed the fork lying alone in the sink left by the last shift. It gleamed unnaturally like polished chrome, almost reflective. I had the urge to clean it, but I remembered rule number 5, never wash it. I placed my fingers on it and yanked them back. The metal was freezing cold like it had just come from a deep freezer, and I swear, I saw my reflection blink at me. I hadn't blinked. Around 3 a.m., the lights suddenly flickered 3 times. I didn't hesitate. I shut everything down, pulled the plugs, and ran into the walk-in freezer. Seconds later, I heard slow, deliberate footsteps. Then a familiar voice just outside the door. "Sweetheart, open the door. It's Mom. Are you okay? My mother died 4 years ago." I pressed my hands over my ears, trembling as her voice morphed into a high-pitched cackle, long and scraping like nails across metal. I went to check the restroom at 1:25 to make sure it was clear. But I got delayed by a late-night customer asking about a special coffee. By the time I was done, the clock read 1:34 a.m. I passed the mirror without thinking, and I saw a version of myself staring back that wasn't moving. He wasn't washing his hands. He wasn't blinking. He was just watching me. Then he smiled. I turned away, heart racing. But when I looked down, I was leaving wet footprints even though I hadn't walked through any water. One night, I found writing behind a dusty painting in the kitchen, written in a dark substance that definitely wasn't ink. Not all rules are written. Some vanished before they could tell the rest. I touched the letters. They were still wet. I started to realize I didn't know everything. And every time you break a rule, it's not just danger. You might be replaced. From that night on, I no longer thought the rules were weird. I saw them as the last line of defense, a fraying thread keeping me alive. But I couldn't have known that some nights the rules change without warning. My shift started at 10 p.m. No customers, no passing cars, just the ticking of the wall clock and the faint flicker of old fluorescent lights. Everything was too quiet. I kept telling myself this was just how it was in rural Nebraska. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. It felt like the diner was waiting for something. Around midnight, the front door chimed and a man walked in. He wore a long coat and a cap pulled low over his face. He moved heavily, but the floor made no sound. I glanced down. No footprints. It had been lightly raining. The parking lot was wet, but his shoes were spotless. He sat at table 5, silent. I handed him the menu. He didn't look at it. Instead, he said in a dry, raspy voice, "No need. I'm just here to watch." I froze. I could have told him to leave, but instead I asked Watch what he looked up, and I froze completely. He had no teeth. Just a gaping black void where a mouth should be. And he smiled. A smile not meant for humans. I turned away for a second to grab water from the sink. When I looked back, his chair was empty. No door chime, no footsteps. But something was left behind, a faint handprint on the glass tabletop, like someone had pressed down with skin long decomposed. And the chair was still warm. I started to feel watched. I opened the curtain. A silhouette was standing in the parking lot, completely still. I blinked. It was gone. I closed the curtain. Seconds later, tap, 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 soft rhythmic knocking on the window behind me. I rushed over, no one. But there on the glass was a damp forehead print, like someone had pressed their face right up against it. I turned on the radio to break the silence. All I got was static. Until exactly 2:13 a.m., when a voice broke through. No background music, no station tag, just a man repeating, "You shouldn't have opened the mirror. You shouldn't have opened the mirror." Then came the choking laughter. Not from the radio, from behind the kitchen counter. I spun around. No one was there. Just the bathroom mirror now cracked open, reflecting a hallway shrouded in darkness. My first night ended with no accidents, no blood. But it shattered everything I believed about the world. What happened couldn't be explained, shouldn't exist, and yet, it did. I now understood the rules weren't superstitions. They were the only thing keeping me from whatever is waiting on the other side of reality. Ever since that first night, I avoided looking into the bathroom mirror. But one evening, as I passed by the doorway, I glanced and saw a shadow standing directly behind me. I whipped around. No one was there. But in the mirror, the shadow was still there, inches from my back, like it was only visible through the glass. From that night on, I draped a towel over the mirror and never touched it again. Even though there was a "Do Not Serve" sign on it, one night, I saw a young woman sitting at table 4. White dress, long hair covering her face, hands folded neatly on the table. I never heard the door chime. No one walked in. I approached to ask if she wanted to order, but the moment I spoke, she slowly tilted her head upward. And beneath her hair was a face with no eyes, no nose, just smooth, featureless skin. I stumbled back, heart pounding. When I blinked, she was gone. The chair was still gently swaying, and 2 icy handprints were left on the table. It hadn't rained that night. The floor was completely dry, but I heard squelch, coming from the back hallway. When I checked, I saw wet footprints starting from the middle of the room, not from the door, as if someone had appeared there. I followed them. They led to the walk-in freezer and stopped right in front of the door. I opened it, empty, but the freezer light was blinking, even though I'd unplugged it the night before. While rinsing glasses around 2 a.m., my hand brushed against something soft and cold. I thought it was a rag, but when I looked closer, it was a pale hand, scarred and veiny, lightly gripping my wrist from beneath the water. I screamed and jumped back, but it was gone. The sink was empty, water still running, and left behind in the drain was a broken fingernail, long, yellowed, and cracked in half. The diner's landline hasn't worked in years, but that night it rang. I picked it up and heard my own voice on the other end. "You're not allowed to leave. You belong here now." I could barely breathe. I whispered, "Who is this?" The answer came in a chorus of whispers. "Don't break the rules. Don't break the rules. Don't break the rules." And then I heard my voice again, laughing, dark and raspy, before the line went dead. I stepped outside to clean the front window. As the parking lights cast their glow, I realized I wasn't reflected in the glass, but something else was, a faint silhouette standing behind me. I spun around. No one there. Looked back at the glass. The shadow was still there, and this time it slowly raised a hand and waved. I nearly lost it. It was the first time I truly desperately wanted to quit this job, but my legs wouldn't move. It felt like they were cemented to the floor. What I experienced wasn't hallucination. These things could touch me, speak to me, mimic my voice, and I was beginning to understand. The rules weren't there to stop them. They were only meant to delay the inevitable, a fate I was no longer sure I could escape. I had followed every rule, but humans weren't made to live by unexplained laws. And so, I broke rule number 3. Do not look into the mirror after 1:33 a.m. That night I was alone. It was raining. The lights in the diner were flickering. At 1:34 a.m. I walked into the bathroom, and I looked directly into the mirror. At first the mirror showed exactly what it should, but then the image drifted slightly to the left. I stood still, but my reflection tilted its head. It smiled, a smile wider than normal, tearing across its face from ear to ear. I turned away. The reflection didn't. It kept staring. The light went out. I heard laughter in my voice, but deeper, raspier, rising from the floor. When the light came back on the mirror, had a long crack right down the center of my face. After that night, I started seeing shadow figures around the diner. No one else saw them, just me. In the sink behind the freezer, gliding through the hallway. Tall, faceless figures who only stared. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard whispers. Switch places. You're not you anymore. One night, an elderly woman came in, dressed normal, polite. But when I handed her the menu, she said, "Why don't you leave and let the one in the mirror take over?" I froze. Her eyes dropped from her face, her skin melting like wax, and underneath was me. A twisted version of myself peeled out from her collapsing form, sitting there smiling, waving at me like we were old friends. The diner itself began to transform. Windows turned into mirrors. Clocks ticked backward. The fridge began breathing. New doors appeared, hallways that never existed before. I opened one and saw myself standing inside, staring back at me through the crack. He whispered, "It's my turn now." That night, I awoke from a daze and found myself sitting in the corner of the diner, not behind the counter. Someone identical to me was there, brewing coffee, serving customers, smiling the way I used to. No one noticed. No one heard me scream. I shouted, pounded on tables, but no one turned around. I was no longer the night shift worker. I was just another shadow, trapped in the place where I broke the rules. One night, while cleaning behind the counter, I accidentally kicked a loose floorboard. Underneath the rotting wood was a narrow gap. Inside, I found an old moldy journal, bound in cracked leather, reeking of smoke and damp. Inside was trembling handwriting. Night Shift Journal, William M., 1994. My heart sank. The last night shift worker from 1994 had disappeared without a trace. William had written detailed entries. At first he thought it was just another boring rural job, but a few weeks in his handwriting grew distorted, frantic, the ink smudged as if his hands were shaking. I hear someone calling my name every night, but when I turn around, no one's there. The reflection in the mirror is mimicking me, but it's half a second behind. I think it wants to replace me. The last entry, written in dried red smears, simply read, "Don't look into its eyes." Behind a painting above table 4, I found a black and white photo folded into quarters. It showed the diner staff from decades ago, smiling in front of the counter. But the terrifying part, one of them looked exactly like me. Not similar, identical. The same mole on the cheek, the same eyes full of dread. Scrawled beneath it, "Night Shift, 1981, replaced." I found an old VHS player in the storage room with the tape still inside. I plugged it into a dusty TV in the kitchen and fast-forwarded. At 2:03 a.m. it showed a worker. He looked exactly like me, wiping the counter. Behind him, shadowy figures glided past, pausing to stare. He never turned around. Then one final shadow passed through him, and suddenly, he vanished from the screen. A few moments later, a new worker walked in smiling. He also looked like me. I confronted the old woman who gave me the rule sheet. I asked, "What is this place really?" She stared at me for a long time, then whispered, "Not everyone gets chosen for night shift. You weren't hired for your skills. You were hired because you match." I asked Match what she didn't answer. And after that day, I never saw her again. I think she was only there to monitor those about to be replaced. In the back office, I found a hand-drawn blueprint of the diner. One room was crossed out in red, "Do not open," behind the old freezer. I pulled the freezer away. And yes, there was a metal door with no handle. I pressed my ear to it. Inside, I heard whispering voices chanting in unison, "It's your fault. It's your fault. It's your fault." I didn't open it. I knew if I did, I would never come back. I thought I was investigating a way out, but I was digging deeper into a system designed to keep people in. Every rule, every phenomenon, every missing person. They're all part of a cycle. And the most horrifying realization, I'm no longer sure who I really am. Maybe I'm just a copy, another role plugged into the night shift. until someone else comes to replace me. I had gotten used to the dead silence of night shifts. But that night, something was very different. The clock didn't tick. The lights didn't flicker. No wind. No passing cars. Time felt frozen. I checked my phone. Every clock was stuck at 2:03 a.m. and wouldn't change. I ran to the counter. The kitchen light was completely off, even though I'd double-checked it. The bathroom mirror had shattered, revealing a dark void with movement behind it. The windows reflected dozens of versions of me, all smiling at me. The rule sheet on the wall had been ripped to pieces, the fragments floating in the air as if caught in an invisible current. I heard knocking, but this time from all directions. The walls trembled. The windows cracked. Then a shadow passed through the door without opening it. It was nearly a head taller than me. Faceless. But I knew it was staring at me. I tried to run, but more came. They didn't attack. They just surrounded me, standing in silence, like they were waiting for a signal. Amid the shadows, someone stepped out of the bathroom. It was me, but not me. Pale skin, solid black eyes, a crooked smile as if pulled up with hooks. He wore my uniform, walked like me, and whispered, "I'm not on the other side anymore. I've come to reclaim my place." He raised his hand. Across the back of it was a burned red mark, rule breaker. I ran for the freezer, but the diner was changing. Windows became mirrors. The walls melted like wax. Tables and chairs floated mid-air, as if the whole room was underwater. I opened the freezer door. It was no longer cold storage. It was a spiraling staircase into a black abyss, echoing with whispers from voices I recognized, the missing workers. I rushed into the kitchen, remembering something from the old journal. Only by reading the words carved into the kitchen wall will the diner offer you a choice. I turned on every light. Under layers of grease I saw it, a sentence written in dried blood. The night shift can only survive if the replacement is rejected by the diner itself. I shouted the words. The diner shook. The shadows recoiled. The mirror version screamed, his face cracked, crumbled into pieces. And then, he vanished. But I knew I wasn't spared. The diner simply wasn't ready to replace me. Not yet. I survived that night. But something inside me didn't come back whole. I'm not sure I'm still human. I'm not sure I'm even me anymore. And even if I wanted to leave, this diner doesn't appear on any map. I once thought this was just a temporary job, but now I know it's a trap, a cycle, a ritual. And I am just another piece of it. The next morning, just as the sun rose, everything quietly returned to normal. The windows weren't broken. The kitchen lights were back on. No shadows. But I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel real. It was as if the whole night had been a dream, or worse, that I had woken up in a reality that wasn't quite mine. I found the broken fingernail in the sink, exactly where I had touched that hand. The bathroom mirror now reflected nothing, just a black, bottomless void. And the wall clock still stuck at 2:03 a.m. even after I replaced the batteries. Something was not over. Each night, certain customers began showing up, always sitting in the same seats. Never speaking. Never ordering food, just staring at me. One of them, wearing a faded jean jacket, looked exactly like William, the man from the journal I found. I gently tapped his shoulder. He turned his eyes pitch black and smiled. The next turn isn't far. Lately, I've been waking up in strange spots, standing somewhere in the diner with no idea how I got there. I hear my own voice coming from the storage room, whispering words I don't remember saying. Once I saw my reflection in the oven door, and it blinked out of sync with me. I started keeping a journal just like William. But my handwriting is becoming more distorted every day. One evening, the old lady came back. She brought a young man, clearly new. He smiled a lot, talked enthusiastically, just like I did on my first night. When his eyes met mine, he froze for a split second. Maybe he sensed something. The old woman looked at me and said with that cold half-smile, "This is the one who'll be covering your shift soon." I nodded, but in my head, one thought kept looping. Don't let him break the rules. Don't let him break the rules. One night, I saw myself walk past the window from the outside. I rushed outside. No one there. When I turned back, I was standing inside the diner watching myself from the other side. I'm not sure who's who anymore. Am I the real one? Or the replacement? Or did I die some night and never realize it? Still, I keep working. I serve customers. I hear the doorbell ring with every new arrival. I follow the rules. And I'm still here. You might ask, why don't you just quit? Believe me, I've tried. But every time I drive away from the parking lot, I find myself opening the front door again, starting another night shift. And the scariest part, I'm no longer sure I want to leave. Maybe I'm part of this place now. Or maybe I was never real to begin with. If you found this story valuable and interesting, please hit the like button. This really helps us bring you more good and valuable content. Leave a comment below and let us know what you think, what questions you have, or what topics you would like us to cover next. We love hearing from you. Of course, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our next stories. Thank you for taking the time to read my stories.